The silence in the High Council's grand chamber was a living thing. It pressed in from the ornate, crystalline walls, thick enough to choke on. For 10,000 years, this room had been the heart of the Galactic Concordance, a place where species from 100 star systems debated, deliberated, and decided the fate of civilized space. The air, usually filled with the low hum of translated whispers and the scratch of data pads, was now utterly still. Every eye, every optical sensor, every perception organ was fixed on the two figures standing at the epicenter of the vast, circular room. One was an Ildari. Her name was Ilara Vance, and she was small, soft-skinned, and wore a simple gray shipsuit. Her pulse hammered in her throat, a frantic drumbeat against the alien quiet. And she felt like a single candle flame in the middle of a hurricane. She was the Envoy, the first official diplomatic representative from a newly discovered species, humanity. The other figure was the reason for the silence. He stood a full head taller than Ilara, a mountain of muscle and ceramic plate armor. His name was Kai. He was her protector, a designation the galactic delegates were only just beginning to understand. He held no weapon, at least none that was visible. His hands, bare and scarred, hung loosely at his sides. His face was a mask of hard planes and a close-cropped beard, his eyes the color of a stormy sea, scanning the tiered rows of alien dignitaries with an unnerving calm. He was the first human many of these beings had ever seen in the flesh, and he was not what they had expected from the Envoy's dossier. And Supreme Coordinator Zor, a towering insectoid being of the Cathar species, finally broke the silence. His chitinous mandibles clicked with a sound that echoed in the vast space. "The human protector," he enunciated, his translator imbuing the words with a tone of profound skepticism. "The Council notes its presence. However, the protocols for first contact negotiations are clear. Security is the sole purview of the Concordance peacekeepers. Your companion is to be disarmed and escorted to a waiting area." Ilara felt Kai's presence beside her, a solid wall of warmth and resolve. She'd been briefed for 2 years on this moment, on the intricate dance of galactic politics, on the species and their customs. She knew this was the first test. "With respect, Coordinator Zor," she said, her voice clear and steady despite her fear. The term protector is not a ceremonial title. On my world, it is a sacred bond. My safety is his responsibility, and his alone. He is not a soldier to be disarmed. He is my shield." A wave of incredulous murmurs rippled through the chamber. A being with luminous, fish-like eyes from the aquatic Thalas system spoke. "Your shield has no visible weaponry. How does he intend to protect you from, say, a plasma discharge with his body?" A few scattered clicks and whistles of laughter followed. Kai's eyes finally moved, locking onto the Thalas delegate. He didn't speak, didn't move, but the laughter died instantly. It was the look. It was the same look a predator gives prey it hasn't decided is worth chasing. The delegate recoiled slightly, its gills fluttering in alarm. Zor's antennae twitched with irritation. "This is highly irregular. The human delegation will abide by our laws, or the negotiations are over before they begin. Envoy Vance, you will instruct your companion to submit to our security protocols, or you will both be escorted from this station." Ilara's mind raced. Failure was not an option, but she knew Kai. To ask him to stand down, to let strange aliens with humming wands pat him down, was to ask him to betray a core part of who he was. Before she could speak, Kai did. His voice was a low rumble, a sound that seemed to vibrate in the bones of every being present. It was the first time he had spoken. "She doesn't instruct me. The chamber went deathly quiet again. No one had addressed the Supreme Coordinator so directly, so bluntly, in millennia. Kai took one step forward. It was a small step. But it placed him half a pace in front of Alara, fully between her and the Council. "The reports you have," he continued, his voice calm but carrying, "they speak of our weapons, our ships. You see humanity as a new variable in your equation of power. You're wrong." His gaze swept the room. "You want to know how I'll protect her? You're looking at it." From the shadows of a high-security gallery, a figure moved with alarming speed. It was a Paz, a reptilian species known for their stealth and employed across the galaxy as bodyguards, and, it was whispered, less savory things. It was the personal guard of a delegate from a system that was staunchly opposed to human admittance. In a blur of motion, it leaped from its perch, its powerful legs propelling it through the air in a silent arc aimed directly at the spot between Alara and Kai. And its claws, capable of shearing through plasteel, were extended. It was a demonstration, a test of the human's claimed prowess. It happened faster than any eye could follow. Kai didn't dodge. He didn't push Alara aside. He moved into the attack. His body twisted. Not away from the descending claws, but into them. His left arm came up, not to block, but to guide. The Paz's claws raked across the armored vambrace on his forearm, showering sparks. The sound was a horrific shriek of tortured metal, but in that same fluid motion, Kai's right hand shot out. It wasn't a punch. It was an open-handed strike that caught the Paz squarely in the center of its chest, just as it was about to land. There was a sickening, wet crack that echoed in the silent chamber. The Paz's forward momentum was not just stopped, it was reversed. Its body was hurled backwards through the air, a rag doll of broken limbs, to crash into the empty seats 20 feet away. It lay still. The entire attack and its conclusion lasted less than 2 seconds. No one breathed. Kai lowered his arm, the shredded metal of his vambrace, the only sign that anything had happened. He looked down at the smoking gashes, then back up at the Council. His expression hadn't changed. It wasn't anger or triumph. It was a simple statement of fact. As I said, the silence that followed was of a different kind. It was no longer the silence of judgment. It was the silence of awe, of primal fear, of a sudden and complete recalibration of reality. The Paz was one of the deadliest close combat specialists in the known galaxy. And this human had just swatted it from the air like an irritating insect, and without breaking a sweat. The chamber had fallen quiet, but it was now a quiet filled with the deafening roar of a new truth. The negotiations, they all realized with a chilling certainty, had just begun on entirely new terms. The second part of the session was a different beast entirely. The initial shock had given way to a frantic, humming current of whispered communications, private data streams buzzing with analysis of the high-definition recordings that had been made of the brief, brutal fight. Supreme Coordinator Zor had declared a short recess, a move unheard of in the middle of an opening address. The Paz delegate, a creature named Slethik, was furiously demanding a formal inquiry, its translator spitting venom. But its eyes, like those of all the others, kept flicking back to the two humans. Alara remained standing in the center of the chamber. She had not moved an inch during the attack. She had trusted Kai completely. Now her heart was a frantic drum against her ribs, but she forced herself to stay calm. She was the diplomat. The words were her domain. Kai had made his statement. Now it was her turn. When the council reconvened, the atmosphere was electric. The patronizing condescension was gone, replaced by a tense, watchful respect. Zor's mandibles clicked. "The council acknowledges the protectors capability. However, this incident underscores our concerns. Your species possesses a level of physical aggression that is unprecedented. It validates our need for strict controls. We must understand the parameters of human aggression before we can even consider integration. Alara seized the opening. You misunderstand the aggression, coordinator, she said, her voice carrying the weight of her species' history. You saw a fight. You saw violence. What you didn't see was the context. She gestured subtly toward Kai. Kai is a protector, one of the best. But he's not a warrior, in the sense you think. On Earth, we have a saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. Kai is not my big stick. He is the last line of defense when my soft words fail. His strength is a consequence of our world, not its defining characteristic. She called up a holographic display from her wrist comm. An image of Earth appeared, a swirling blue and green marble. Then another image of a massive reptilian creature with teeth the size of daggers, locked in a battle with a group of primitive-looking humans wielding stone-tipped spears. This is the world we evolved on, a death world, as your initial survey team classified it. Gravity 20% higher than your standard, an atmosphere with a volatile mix of gases, a biosphere where every creature, plant, and microbe is in a constant state of competitive survival. We are not aggressive because we choose to be. We are resilient because we have to be. Kai's bones are denser than any being in this room. His muscle fibers can contract with 3 times the force of a Cathar warrior. His reflexes are hardwired to process threat in milliseconds. We did not build this. Our planet did. The chamber listened, rapt. She scrolled through images. Humans running marathons, swimming vast oceans, climbing sheer rock faces. This isn't violence, this is our baseline. We call it athletics. You call it a superpower. The paths that attacked us? On my world, a similar predator exists. It's called a lion. Our ancestors hunted them with sharpened sticks. We didn't have energy claws or plasma rifles. We had our minds, our stamina, and our ability to work together. She then switched the display to images of human cities, of art, of music, of vast libraries. But this is what we do with that resilience. We build, we create, we dream. The very aggression you fear is the same force we have learned to channel into ambition, into protecting the weak, into pushing the boundaries of what is possible. We fight not because we love to, but because everything on our world has taught us that the cost of losing a fight is extinction. Kai stood silently, a living embodiment of her words. He was the product of 1 billion years of brutal evolution, standing perfectly still in a room full of beings who had never had to run from a predator in their entire civilized existence. Slithic, the path's delegate, hissed, "Pretty words, Envoy, but your protector just crippled one of my finest. This is the action of a barbarian race. You bring violence into our sacred halls." Kai turned his gaze to Slithic. He didn't move, but the air seemed to thicken. "Your guard attacked a diplomatic envoy under a flag of truce," he said, his voice flat. "On my world, in any nation, that act is punishable by immediate execution. I showed mercy. He will live. He will learn. That is the difference between us and a predator. We have a choice." The logic was irrefutable. The guard had acted, and the human had responded with a level of force that was both devastating and, by his own terrifying standards, irrestrained. The other delegates began to murmur amongst themselves, not with fear, but with a dawning, unsettling comprehension. This wasn't a species of brutes. This was a species of apex survivors who had learned to temper their lethality with law, with ethics, with mercy. It was a concept so alien, so paradoxical, it was difficult to process. Zor's posture shifted. The arrogance was gone. In its place was a deep, calculating respect. You speak of choice, Envoy. Yet your very presence here is a choice. Why? Why seek membership in a community you so clearly do not need? You could conquer. Your protector just demonstrated that your baseline physiology outmatches our elite. Ilara smiled, a small human gesture that looked utterly foreign on her face. Because, Coordinator, conquest is boring. It's the easy path. We've had our fill of war amongst ourselves. It nearly destroyed us. What we want now, what we've always wanted, is to explore, to trade, to share stories. We want to see the impossible nebula your poets write about. We want to taste the spices of Thalas. We want to know what lies beyond the next hill. Our aggression, our resilience, it's not a weapon pointed at the galaxy. It's an engine. And we're asking if we can join you on the road. The Grand Chamber, which had fallen quiet with fear, was now quiet with a profound and revolutionary thought. For the first time in their long, stable history, the Galactic Concordance was being offered something it had never had, a partner who didn't need them, but chose to want them, a species that could shatter them, but offered a hand instead. It was terrifying. It was humbling. And it was, perhaps, the most hopeful thing they had ever heard. The third and final part of the session stretched long into the station's artificial night. The formalities had been dispensed with. The delegates now gathered in small, informal clusters, their questions no longer a unified front, but a cacophony of individual curiosities and concerns. The Thalas delegate, the one who had laughed, now approached Ilara, his luminescent eyes wide with genuine fascination. "Your protector," he gurgled, his translator struggling with his excited speech. "The impact, the Paz's claws, they should have severed his arm. Our best metallurgists cannot explain the composite of his armor. Is it a secret alloy?" Ilara glanced at Kai, who gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. "It's not a secret, delegate. It's just a ceramic composite. And the secret isn't the material, it's the structure beneath it." She looked at Kai's arm. His bones, his muscles, they absorbed the kinetic energy. The armor just stopped the edge. On our world, we have a saying. It's not the armor that makes the warrior. It's the warrior that makes the armor. His body is the primary shock absorber. The armor just keeps the claws from tickling. The Thalas delegate blinked, his simple mind struggling with the concept of a biological entity being tougher than advanced technology. He swam away, muttering to himself. A small, furry delegate from a low-gravity world, looking like a sentient ball of fluff, nervously asked Ilara, "Is it true your kind can survive in a vacuum for short periods?" "Our scouts picked up a distress signal from a human vessel, and by the time we arrived, the survivor was just floating, awake." Ilara shook her head. "No, that's a myth. We need to breathe. But we can hold our breath for a remarkably long time, and our blood can carry more oxygen. He was probably in a pressure suit. But the story shows you our tenacity. We don't give up easily." The night wore on. Each question chipped away at the monolithic fear, replacing it with a complex mosaic of understanding. They learned of human endurance, of their ability to run for days, of their pain, tolerance, that bordered on the masochistic, of their strange obsession with sports that mimicked combat. They began to see the pattern. Humanity wasn't a race of warriors. They were a race of engineers who had been forced to build their machines, their societies, and their very bodies to withstand a hostile universe. And now they stood here, back in the peaceful heart of the galaxy, and they were bored. Peace was a vacation, and they wanted to share it. Finally, as the artificial lights began to simulate a dawn, Supreme Coordinator Zor called for order. The delegates returned to their seats. The atmosphere was different. The fear was still there, a low hum in the background, but it was now overlaid with something else, a tentative, fragile hope. Zor addressed the chamber, his voice formal, but with a new weight to it. "We have heard the human envoy. We have witnessed the human protector. Our initial assessment was incomplete. We have spent 10 millennia building a community based on the principle of mutual need. The humans present us with a paradox. They do not need us, and yet they stand before us, asking for our friendship." He turned his multifaceted eyes on Elara. "Your proposal for membership is unprecedented. The Council cannot and will not grant it based on one session. There must be observation periods, cultural exchanges, and a probationary term of no less than 50 cycles." Alara's heart sank, but she kept her face neutral. It was a delay, a classic bureaucratic stall. Zor raised a slender claw, silencing the murmurs. "However, in light of the unique circumstances, the Council is prepared to offer an immediate provisional status. Not full membership, but a charter of exploration and cultural exchange. Your ships may travel our space. Your people may visit our worlds. And most importantly, your envoy and her protector are to be granted permanent diplomatic credentials, with all the rights and privileges that entails. I hear on this station." A wave of surprised clicks and whistles rippled through the chamber. It was a compromise, a way to keep the humans close, to study them, to learn from them, without fully committing. Silithic the Paz immediately rose to object, but Zor cut him off. "The Paz's security breach will be investigated separately. The human protector acted within the bounds of any reasonable interpretation of self-defense. The matter is closed." Kai finally shifted his weight, a minute movement that all eyes noticed. He looked at Elara. She gave him a small, tired smile. It wasn't a victory, not yet. But it was a door. Elara stepped forward. "The human people accept your generous offer, Coordinator Zor. We will prove ourselves worthy of your trust, not through displays of force, but through our contributions to your culture, your science, and your future. We ask only that you judge us by our actions, not by our origins." Zor's mandibles spread wide in the Cathar equivalent of a smile. "Then let it be so. The envoy from Deathworld Earth is recognized. Her protector is acknowledged. The chamber stands adjourned." As the delegates began to file out, their conversations a low, excited buzz, Elara and Kai remained in the center of the vast room. She let out a long, shuddering breath she felt like she'd been holding for days. She looked up at Kai, whose stormy eyes were now calm, watching the aliens disperse with a quiet, unreadable expression. "We did it," she whispered. Kai looked down at her, and for the first time, a tiny crease appeared at the corner of his mouth, the ghost of a smile. "You did it," he rumbled softly. "I just stood here." She laughed, in a sound that was suddenly bright and clear in the emptying chamber. "No, you were the statement. I was just the translation." She looked at his torn vambrace, the deep gashes in the metal. "We should get that fixed." He shook his head. "No, leave it." She understood. It was a souvenir, a first mark of their journey into the wider galaxy. A reminder to every alien who saw him that the quiet human in the corner was a force of nature, a protector from a world that forged its children in fire. They walked out of the grand chamber together, the small diplomat and her living shield, leaving behind a silent room and a galaxy that would never be quite the same. The silence they left behind wasn't one of fear or judgment. It was the silence of a story just beginning. A story whose ending no one could possibly predict. And for the first time, the galaxy was eager to turn the page.